Hello folks, in today's video we will build a whack-a-mole game like this. So I can refresh this page. It will first of all ask for my name. So let me give my name Dipto and the game will start. So whenever I click on this blue box, I will get 1 point. So it is too fast, I am not able to click. And so the game is now over and my score is 7. And we also have one local storage with the high score and the current score also. So let's build this game. So here I have one empty HTML file and this is the live server. So let me reopen it and let me close the previous tabs. So here I have the heading whack-a-mole and I also have the style.css and the script.js file attached. So first of all, let me create the timer. So I will write time left in h2 and now inside a span, let me give an ID of time left and let's give the time as 0. This is something we will change. We will give the player names and the local storage for high school later. First of all, let's create the box container. So now let's create one container that will contain all the boxes and let's give the class name as grid and ID also as grid. We are not using the style grid, we are only giving them as class name and ID. Here I will create all my squares. So let's use one shortcut. I will give the class name as square and let's give unique IDs as square hyphen dollar, which will start it from square 1. And let's also give some value of dollar and let's make 16 such boxes. And so we get our 1 to 16. Now it doesn't look like boxes because we have to add the styles, and in one of these boxes there will be a mole. So let's randomly give in box number 8 one mole. Okay, so now let's add some styles to make it look more like a game. First of all, in the body section, let me change the font family to, give it Cambria. Yeah, this is good. Now we have our grid, and in the grid, first of all I will do is I will give the border of 2 pixel solid black. So we get one border, but now we want to give some width of, let's say, 500 pixel and height also of 500 pixel. Now this is better. So now for every individual square, let me once again give the border of 2 pixel solid black. And let's give the width as 100 pixel and the height also of 100 pixel. Yeah, now the squares look good, but we don't want to be vertical. So so in the grid I will do display of flex. Now if you want to know more about flexbox, I have a separate video for that, you can check it out, but here we will move forward. And the next thing we will do is flex wrap of wrap. And as you can see, the squares are in correct shape and the squares are getting transferred to the next row. And now we have some properties we should give. We will give align content center. So all the boxes are stacked, and also justify content center to keep all the boxes at the center. And for every square, we will also give some margin. Let's give a margin of 2 pixel. Let's make it 5 pixels. What about 10? The 5 is good. And let's also give some border radius for both. So for the boxes, let me give 25 pixels, and for the grid, let me give a border radius of, let's make it 15 pixels. Yeah, now this looks much better. And also let me just align the text at the center. Yeah, now to make it look better, in the grid, let's add a background color of, let's say, lawn green. Now the boxes are also covered, so in the boxes let me give a background color of white smoke. What about wheat? Yeah, this looks better. Now so we have our container and all the boxes. So now let's also add some styles for the mole, which is a separate class in one of the boxes. So for the mole, I will simply give the background color of, let's say, blue. And let's change the color of the text to white. Yeah, this looks much better. Actually these numbers are not required, but we are only writing this for reference. And also let's center our whack-a-mole and our time. So h1 comma h2 text align center. Yeah, okay, one more thing, this whole game, it is actually not centered, it is actually aligned at the left of our screen. So we want this to be centered also. So what we can do is simply in the body section, I will do display of flex. Let me remove these styles because we are using flexbox. Then I will do flex direction column, and then we will do is align item center. Now as you can see, there are some margins added for the whack-a-mole and time lift. We want to remove that because we don't want them to take so much spaces. So for h1 and h2 I will do margin of 0. It is too low, so let's make it 5 pixel. Yeah, now this looks much better. Let's make it 10. Yeah, so now let's focus more on building the game, and we can check the styles later. So now we will move to our JavaScript, and we will start by identifying our DOM elements. So first of all, we will start by identifying our squares. So I will write const all square, and I will write document query selector all, because we actually have 16 squares, and I will write dot, and we have our class name, that is square. And now if I console log this one, you can find that I have all my 16 squares, all square. And let me click on inspect and go to my console, and as you can see, I have all my 16 squares. And now we will identify the other elements also. So I have a mole, and I will write document dot query selector, because we only have one mole, and I'll write dot mole. And then we have our time left, and that is document get element by id, because we have given one id of time left. And actually we should write one more thing over here, which is also very important. So I will go to my index.html file, and I will also add the score. So let's give h2 of score, and then in the same way, inside a span, let me give the id of score, and let's give the score of 0. So now we have whack-a-mole score as well as our time left. So now let's also identify our score. Document get element by id of score, and we will also create one result where we will numerically save our scores. That's it. And so now let's shorten this thing up. So now first of all, what do we need to do? What we need to do is create one random number for the moles. So how can we do that? So let's create one function called random square. Let's name it rnd square. And what this square will do is, first of all, it will loop through all the squares, and if it has a mole, it will remove the mole. Like if it has a class of mole, it will remove that class, and it will randomly assign the mole to a random square. So how can we do that? So first of all, I'll do is all square dot for each, and now I have one individual square, and you can check it out that we are getting one square. So let's do one square, and let's remove this part, and let's execute this function rnd square. And as you can see, we have our 16 squares. So what we want when we have a square, we want to check that if the square has a class list of mole, and if it has a class list, let's remove it. So I will do class list and remove mole, because it already knows it is a class. So now as you can see, previously in the square 8 we have a mole, but now if I execute, what you can see is that, let me just refresh, we can see nothing because it has removed the mole, and we are no longer logging out the square. So let me just log out the square, and you can see that the mole is gone. As you can see, none of the squares have a mole, and that is because we are removing this mole. Now we have to randomly assign the mole to a square. So let me just create one random square, and what the square will do is, it will first of all take a random number, and it will assign that to the square. So I will take math.random. So this will generate a number between 0 and 1, and for number between 0 to 16, let me multiply it by 16, and I have to use the math.floor because it need to be a whole number. Math.floor, and math.floor of this thing means we have one number in between 0 and 15, and this is basically we are checking in the array. And now if I console log this random square, you will see what do I get. I get a random square every time. So this time 13, second time 6, third time 16. So we are getting one of the squares. Now what we want to do is we want to simply assign the mole to a random square, and to do that it is very simple, and that is random square dot class list dot add, and I will add the mole. So now let's say, let me simply okay, let me just log out all the squares, and you will be able to see that the moles are changing. So for the first case, the square 7 has the mole, and for the second case, a different square 15 has the mole. And as you can see, because we already have the styles, the colors, and accordingly everything is changing, so the moles are changing, that is for sure. So now what do we need to do next? What we need to do next is we have to create another variable. Let's call it hit position. So which is the square that need to be hit to generate a score, and that is the hit position. And let's assign the ID of the square to the hit position. So square.id, and if I now log out my hit position, you can see what is the result. So I have all my squares and I have my hit position also. So now, okay, it is saying that there is some issue over here, and that is, okay, it is not square, it should be random square.id. Square is this one inside the all square dot for each loop, and outside we do not have the square, we only have the random square, the ID of which I want to assign to the hit position. So now if I simply refresh, okay, I need to save it. Now as you can see, the first square has the mole, and I have the ID first square one, so I can remove this one, and wherever is my mole, that is assigned to this hit position. Now we will need this later, that's why we are making this hit position. So now what do we need to do? We need to now create another for each loop in the all square, and inside this loop we again have a square. And what do we want to do with the square is we want to check that if we are clicking on the square that has the mole. So what I want to do is in square.add event listener, if my key is down, so this key down is whenever we are clicking on the down key of the mouse. So actually not key down, this is mouse down. So whenever we are clicking on a key in the keyboard, that is key down, and whenever we are clicking on the mouse, it is mouse down. And we want to see whether we are actually doing the mouse down or not. So let's pass this E thing, and let's log out, log the E. So in square 9 when I click, okay, actually this is looping through all the squares, so anywhere I click, so outside the square if I click, we are not getting anything, and outside here also we are not, but in 13 we are getting 14, 10, 15. So in any square when I click, I get this console log E, because it is looping through the squares and I'm checking for the mouse down. But what do we want to do over here? We want to check if we are actually hitting the square with the hit position, which is already assigned here. So what we will check over here is if our square.id is actually equals to my hit position. And if that is the case, what do we want to do? We have our result, which is actually the score, and so we want our result to go up by 1, result plus plus. And let's do one thing, let's also change the score. So we will do score.inner HTML or score.text content, anything is fine. We can change in 3 ways: inner text, inner HTML, and text content equals to my result. So that is what we want to do. So now let's just check it out. So we have 15 over here. So we are clicking on 3, 2, nothing is happening. But when we are clicking on 15, as you can see, the score is now 1. And when we are clicking it twice, it becomes 2. So actually this thing is working. Now only thing that is left is this mole need to travel around, and it should not be in a static position, then everybody will score the high score. So yeah, that's it. And so another thing is there that after we are like adding our score, the hit position should be null. Otherwise what happens is, let's say even when this is traveling around, this will stay here for 1 second. So in 1 second, if someone is clicking 5 times, they will get 5 score. But now as you can see, the score is still 1 because I am changing the hit position to null. So let's comment this line for now. We will see this when we are actually moving this around, and why this hit position null is important. So let's remove this console login. So now we have our scores also. Now only thing we need to do is to how we can travel this mole around. So let's create another function called move mole, and what I will do inside this move mole is I will call set interval, which will execute a certain function at an interval. So I will execute this random square function, let's say every 1 second. And now when I call this move mole function, let's see what happens, and let's remove this random square. So as you can see, after every 1 second the square is changing its position. So now let's say I am clicking on this. So as you can see, in one place I should be only getting 1 point, but I am getting many points, and that is because this line is commented out. So now in one position I will only get 1 point. Yeah, so our move mole function works perfectly fine. Now we also need another function, and that is called countdown, because right now the time left is always 0, but this time should be moving down. So let's create a countdown function for the time. And here actually now we need 2 more variables, like few more. So let's create one variable called timer, and let's create another variable called countdown timer. And we will also need another variable for the current time. So let's name it car time, and let's give the time as 15 seconds. So now what I will do inside the move mole is I will assign this set interval to this timer, because actually I also want to clear out the set interval at a certain time. And now we have our countdown, and when the countdown function is called, the first thing that will happen over here is the current time will go down, and the next thing that will happen is that it will display the time. So I have my time left dot inner HTML. This thing should be my basically my countdown timer. It should be my current time. So now let's see what happens. Okay, now we also need this thing to be called time and again. So as we can see in my move mole function, this timer is getting called every 1 second. So let's write the countdown timer, and let's create another set interval function over here, which will call this countdown after every 1 second. So I want my time left to be displayed after every 1 second. So now let's see what happens. As you can see, 14, 13, 12, this thing is actually working fine. So let's make it 10 seconds for better experiment. So now what happens is, the issue is that even after 10 seconds is passing, the game is not stopping or nothing like that is happening. So here what we need to do is, if my current time is actually equals to 0, I want few things. Let me log out the result, because that will be my result. And this is actually, as you can see, the time is going down and down only. It is never stopping. And whenever it is 0, it will show the result. That's fine. So let me create some result 1. So when it is 0, it will show this result, but I also want this timer to stop. So what I can do over here is that whenever this thing is 0, I want a clear interval of this countdown timer, and I also want a clear interval for this one, for my normal timer. So now let's see what happens. So time is going, okay, this is happening directly, and that is because this should be inside this. So now after 10 seconds, the timer and everything will stop. So let me just create some score, 1 score, and it will stop, and I have my score of 1 after 10 seconds. So as you can see, the game is working, that's for sure. But now let's also add the high score and player names, those things. So in index.html file, I have to now add few more things, and that is let's create another h2, and let's name layer, and let's give a span id of high score player or high player, and after that we will give the player name over here. So let's give the player name A as of now, and after this span I will have another high score of Okay, let's give one space. After a we have to give one space, and high score. And after this also I need another span, and this span will again have an ID of high score. And what do I need over here is my high score, so let's give it 0 as of now. And in the next line I already have my score, so here I will add another player. And then in the span, let me just add ID of player, and let's give the name as B. And I have my score with the ID of score, and these things are there already. So now I also have to identify these things at the top. Now this is purely optional, or if you want to add local storage you can follow along. So I also need to identify them. So I need to identify my high player, that will be document get element by ID of high player. Then I have for my high score, I will have document get element by ID of my high score. And I also need my normal player, that is player. I will have document get element by ID of my player. Yeah, that's it. And now we can, for the player names and all of these things, so as you have seen in the beginning of the video, I can make one prompt over here and enter your name, that's it. And then I can log out this prompt player. And actually this thing should be let, this thing should not be const, because we cannot assign const, like we cannot assign something to const. So let's make these things let for simplicity, and let's also change the score to let. Yeah, so now as you can see I have, let's give the name as C over here, here, not there. Okay, and now if I go to my console, you will see I have my C. So instead of giving these prompts, let me just hard code these names, because I don't like these prompts frankly. So let me give the name as D. So the player will be always C. Now what we need to do is for both the high player and high score, I need to access few things from the local storage. So for the high player I need to get item, and I need to get item of something from here. So let's say I need the high player from there. And for the high score I need the same thing, high score. Okay, so actually these things are DOM elements. So first of all I have to create some separate variables and then assign the name of the variables here. So high player name will be here, and then let's make it high score result, and I will assign from local storage something, let's say get item, and I want my high score. And then in my high player dot inner HTML I can assign my high player name, and in my high score dot inner HTML I can assign my high score result. So now there will be nothing, because these things are not assigned as of now. So now what we will do is, inside where we are checking that my timer is 0 or not, inside this I will assign my, like I will create the keys of the local storage. So now let's say my result is greater than my high score result. So if this is the case, then what do we want to do? We want to do something, and that is local storage.set item. I want to set, first of all I'll give the key, that is high player. And what is the name I want to set? I want to set the name of the player. Okay, and the next thing that I want to do is in the local storage.set item, in place of my high score I want to give my current result. That's it. And let's also check one thing over here. Yeah, actually there is an issue over here, and that is both of this player is the DOM element, and I have assigned the value of C to this player, so I have to make it player name like this. And that's it. And here in place of player I have to assign the player name. So now this thing will actually work. So as you can see, after I have played the game for some time, I get a new high score with the player of D. And so the only issue is that there should be a space over here, which is actually very simple. And we simply have to keep some space somewhere. And yeah, now this thing is resolved. So yeah, our game is working fine. I will also give a GitHub repository link for this project in the description below. So if you were stuck somewhere, you can definitely check out the code from there. So thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.